On the day Amanda walked into Nelson's life again, he almost dropped the tray in his hands. Not because he still loved her, but because she was stepping out of a car that cost more than everything he had ever earned in his life, and she was smiling at him, like nothing had happened. 3 years earlier, she had left him without looking back. 3 years earlier, she had chosen a billionaire over him. 3 years earlier, she had said the words that destroyed his heart. And now, she was standing in front of him again. But this time, she wasn't alone. And the reason she had come back would change Nelson's life forever. 3 years earlier, Nelson was 31 years old, poor and exhausted. He worked at a small electronics repair shop on the corner of a noisy street. The shop was cramped, dusty, and always hot because the ceiling fan barely worked. Every day he fixed broken radios, old televisions, and cheap phones. The pay was small and the hours were long, but he had a reason to keep going. Amanda. At 26, Amanda was beautiful in a simple, natural way. She worked at a clothing boutique across town and always smelled faintly of perfume and fabric softener. Every evening after work, she would meet Nelson at a small roadside cafe. They couldn't afford much, so they usually shared one plate of rice and a bottle of soda. But to Nelson, those evenings were the best part of his day. Amanda would laugh, talk about customers at the boutique, and dream out loud about their future. One day, she would say, "We'll have a small house. Nothing fancy, just ours." Nelson would smile. "And a dog." Amanda would laugh. "No dog. Dogs eat too much." They would sit there, joking and dreaming, as if love alone could pay rent. Nelson had been saving money secretly. Every week he put a small amount aside in an old metal box under his bed. He had a plan. Before the end of the year, he would buy a simple ring and ask Amanda to marry him. It wouldn't be expensive, but it would be honest. And he believed that was enough. One evening, Amanda didn't show up at the cafe. Nelson waited. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. He called her phone several times, but she didn't answer. Finally, almost 2 hours later, she arrived. But something was different. She wasn't wearing her usual simple clothes. Instead, she had on a stylish dress Nelson had never seen before. Her hair was perfectly done. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like someone from a completely different world. "Sorry I'm late," she said quietly, sitting down. Nelson forced a smile. "I was worried." Amanda didn't smile back. Instead, she stared at the table. "Nelson," she said softly, "we need to talk." His stomach tightened. "About what?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "I can't keep living like this." Nelson blinked. "Living like what?" "Like we're stuck, like nothing is changing. We've been together for 3 years and we're still struggling." He leaned forward. "Things will get better. I'm working on a business idea. I just need time." "That's what you've always said," she replied. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. And that scared him more than anything. Then she said the words that would haunt him for years. "I met someone." Nelson's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" he asked slowly. "His name is Gerald," she said. "He's 37. He owns several companies. He came to the boutique a few times." Nelson's chest tightened. "And?" he asked. "He asked me out." Silence fell between them. "And you said yes," Nelson said quietly. Amanda nodded. "He wants to marry me." The world seemed to stop. Nelson stared at her, waiting for her to laugh and say it was a joke. But she didn't. "I said yes," she repeated. Nelson felt his hands tremble. "All this time," he said, "were you just waiting for someone richer?" Amanda shook her head quickly. "No, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" She swallowed hard. "I'm tired, Nelson. Tired of worrying about money. Tired of struggling every day. I want a better life." "And you don't think I can give you that?" She looked down. I don't know if you ever will." Those words cut deeper than any insult, because they were honest, and honesty hurts the most. Nelson reached into his pocket. He felt something small and cold, the ring. He had planned to give it to her that night. He had imagined her smile, her tears of joy, the way she would hug him. But now those dreams felt foolish. He left the ring in his pocket. "So that's it?" he asked. 3 years, just over. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt you, but you are. I know. Do you love him?" She hesitated. Then she said something that broke his heart completely. "He can give me the life I want." 2 months later, Amanda married Gerald. She was 26, he was 37, and overnight her life changed. She moved into a mansion with marble floors, tall glass windows, and more rooms than she could count. Gerald bought her expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and a brand new car. For the first time in her life, Amanda didn't have to worry about money. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, she would remember the small cafe, the shared meals, the laughter, and the man who once promised to build a future with her. A strange emptiness would settle in her chest, but she pushed the feeling away. After all, she had chosen this life. Meanwhile, Nelson's world had fallen apart. He stopped going to the cafe. He worked longer hours. Sometimes he slept in the shop to avoid going home to his empty apartment. Every street corner reminded him of Amanda, the bus stop where they met, the park where they shared their first kiss, the small restaurant where they celebrated her birthday with one tiny cake. Everything felt like a memory he couldn't escape. 3 years passed. Amanda was now 29. Gerald had just turned 40 and had become even richer. And Nelson was now 34, still poor, still working at the same repair shop, still carrying the pain of the girl who once promised to marry him. But fate had not finished with him yet. One afternoon, as Nelson was wiping his hands with an old cloth, a sleek black luxury car stopped in front of the shop. Everyone inside turned to look. Cars like that didn't come to places like this. The door opened, and out stepped Amanda, dressed in elegance, wearing gold, looking like someone from a completely different world. She walked toward him slowly. When their eyes met, Nelson felt his heart pound. "Amanda," he whispered. She gave a small, nervous smile. "Hello, Nelson," she said. "It's been a long time." He swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated. Then she said something that made the entire room go silent. "I came to take you somewhere," Nelson frowned. "Where?" "To meet my husband." His heart skipped. "Why?" Amanda looked him straight in the eyes. "Because he wants to offer you a job." Nelson froze. The woman who once left him for a rich man was now asking him to work for that same man, and he had no idea that this decision would change his life forever. Nelson stood frozen in the doorway of the repair shop. The noise of tools and chatter around him faded into the background. All he could see was Amanda standing in front of him, dressed in elegance, her perfume faint but familiar. "I came to take you somewhere," she had said, "to meet my husband." And then the words that still echoed in his ears. "He wants to offer you a job." Nelson stared at her, trying to understand what he had just heard. "A job?" he repeated. "From your husband?" Amanda nodded. "Yes." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Why would a billionaire care about someone like me?" "He saw your picture," she said, "and he asked about you." "My picture?" Nelson frowned. "How?" "I still had some old photos," she admitted quietly. "From before." Nelson's chest tightened. "So you showed your husband pictures of your ex-boyfriend?" he asked. Amanda looked uncomfortable. "It wasn't like that. We were talking about the past. I told him about you. And he just decided to offer me a job out of kindness?" She didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, "Gerald respects hard-working people. He said any man who survived that long with nothing must have something special in him." Nelson didn't know what to say. Part of him felt insulted, another part felt curious, and a small, quiet part of him felt hopeful. "I don't know, Amanda," he said. "This feels strange." "I understand," she replied softly, "but just meet him. That's all I'm asking. If you don't like the offer, you can walk away." Nelson looked around the repair shop. Old fans, broken radios, dusty shelves. The same place he had been stuck in for years. The same place where his dreams slowly died. He swallowed. "All right," he said. "I'll go." 20 minutes later, Nelson was sitting in the back seat of Amanda's luxury car. The leather seats were soft. The air conditioning was cool. The inside of the car smelled expensive. He had never ridden in a car like this before. Amanda sat beside him, quiet. Neither of them spoke for most of the ride. The silence felt heavy with memories. Finally, Nelson said, "Are you happy?" Amanda turned to him. "What?" "With him. Are you happy?" She looked out the window. "Yes," she said after a moment, but something in her voice didn't sound convincing. The car pulled into a long driveway lined with tall palm trees. At the end stood a massive glass building. Nelson's eyes widened. "This is his office," Amanda nodded. "One of them." They stepped out of the car and a security guard immediately opened the door for them. Inside, everything was polished, modern, and quiet. People in suits moved around confidently. Nelson suddenly felt very small in his worn-out shoes and faded shirt. Amanda noticed. She leaned closer and whispered, "Don't worry. Just be yourself." He nodded slowly. They entered a large office at the end of a long hallway. Behind a massive wooden desk sat a tall, confident-looking man in an expensive suit. Gerald. At 40, he looked powerful but calm. His hair was neatly trimmed and his expression was composed. He stood up as they entered. "So this is Nelson," he said, extending his hand. Nelson hesitated for a second, then shook it. Gerald's grip was firm. "Nice to meet you," Gerald said. "Amanda has told me a lot about you." Nelson forced a polite smile. "I hope only good things." Gerald chuckled. "Mostly." Amanda sat quietly in a chair by the side, watching them. Gerald gestured toward a seat. "Please sit down." Nelson obeyed, feeling nervous. Gerald leaned back in his chair. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "I need people I can trust. Hard-working people, not just people with fancy degrees." Nelson listened carefully. "Amanda told me about your work ethic," Gerald continued. "How you used to skip meals just to save money. How you supported your mother. How you never gave up." Nelson felt embarrassed. "I just did what I had to do." Gerald nodded. "Exactly, and that's why I want you on my team." Nelson blinked. "Doing what?" "Starting at the bottom," Gerald said. "Operations assistant. It's not glamorous, but the pay is good and there's room to grow." "How much?" Nelson asked quietly. Gerald named a number. Nelson's eyes widened. It was almost 5 times what he was earning at the repair shop. "That's a lot," Nelson said. Gerald smiled. "It's what you're worth, if you're willing to work for it." Nelson looked at Amanda. She gave him a small, encouraging nod, but something in her eyes felt complicated, almost like guilt. "Why are you doing this?" Nelson asked Gerald. Gerald raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You don't know me. I'm just your wife's ex-boyfriend." Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Gerald didn't look bothered. Instead, he said calmly, "Because I believe in potential, and because I'm not afraid of the past." Nelson studied his face. There was no jealousy, no anger, just confidence. It was the confidence of a man who had everything. "I'll take the job," Nelson said finally. Gerald smiled. Good. You start Monday. He stood up and shook Nelson's hand again. Don't disappoint me. I won't, Nelson said, and for the first time in years, he meant it. As they walked back toward the car, Amanda spoke softly. I'm glad you accepted. Nelson nodded. Me too. They stood beside the car for a moment. There was something unsaid between them. Thank you, he finally said. Amanda looked surprised. For what? For not forgetting me? Her eyes softened. I never did. That night, Nelson sat on his small bed in his one-room apartment. The same cracked walls, the same old fan, the same thin mattress. But everything felt different. For the first time in years, he felt hope. He looked at the small metal box under his bed. He opened it. Inside was the old engagement ring he never gave Amanda. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he closed the box and pushed it back under the bed. That part of my life is over, he whispered. But deep inside, he had no idea that his future was about to become bigger than anything he had ever imagined. And he certainly didn't know that one day he would become richer than the man who just gave him a job. Nelson took the job. The poor man Amanda once left behind was now working inside her billionaire husband's world. Every morning, he walked through glass doors he never imagined entering. Every night, he returned home knowing one thing had changed forever. He was no longer invisible. Amanda watched him differently now, not as the struggling man she walked away from, but as a man rising right before her eyes. And Gerald, the billionaire who gave Nelson a chance, had no idea that the man he hired was quietly becoming his greatest competition. But here's the question no one is asking out loud yet. What happens when a woman who chose money over love sees her old love becoming powerful? Do you think Amanda will cheat on Gerald? Or will she want to marry Nelson again if he becomes richer than her husband? And what if the man she once rejected becomes the man everyone bows to? Because in Part 2, Nelson doesn't just rise, he begins to build something that will shake everything. If you want Part 2, say it in the comments, subscribe and trust me. You won't believe what happens next.